Hey friends, I want to thank our sponsor, Raygun. Are you struggling to replicate the bugs and performance issues that your customers are reporting? Plug Raygun into your web and mobile applications right now and diagnose problems in minutes rather than hours. Kiss goodbye having to dig through log files and relying on frustrated users to report issues. Make your software development life so much easier using Raygun's error, crash, and performance monitoring tools. Every software team can create flawless software experiences for their customers with Raygun. Try it free today at raygun.com. That's RAYGUN.com. Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm talking with Amie Danielle Dansby, or Amie Double D. How are you?
I am amazing.
You are amazing, and I have been enjoying watching you on TV with my kids, and I was literally just sitting down. We had been talking about watching Lego Masters on Fox. We've seen the ads, we recorded it, and then we're watching it. I'm like, wait a second, I know her. And then my friends now think I'm famous because I am peripherally connected to you on Twitter, and now I'm like, one Kevin Bacon away from a famous person.
The internet connects us.
It's so cool.
Or Lego connects us.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because, I've got like an entire, 3 Billy shelves from IKEA filled with Lego crap behind me. I'm sure you have entire rooms dedicated to the stuff.
Oh, it's my house. I love it when people come over, they'll ask me, how many kids do you have? I'm like, I have none. I have no kids. And don't touch the stuff on the third shelf.
What is isn't there an acronym for that? Adult Friends of Lego?
Yeah, it's AFL. It's an adult fan of Lego.
Yeah. Why is there still a stigma? Why is it not okay? It seems like, you ever go to a garage sale or whatever and you find a cache of Legos where a child has gone to college and then you've come upon their remainders and you're like, yes.
Jackpot. Yeah, it's interesting, especially I remember asking my dad, I'm like, were Lego always so expensive as a kid? He's like, yes, you just didn't have to pay for them. So they call it sometimes the dark days. So when you're a child, you played with Lego, and then you go off to college and you're a poor college kid and you don't play with Lego. And then when you get a job, you're like, I'm missing something. Some type of tinkering, building, therapeutic. I was homeschooled though, so we always had Lego. My mom used them for everything from engineering, science, little history lessons. Thankfully, we didn't live in a digital age where there was much embarrassing footage. There is some.
So they integrated Lego into your everyday life. It's like, okay, we need stuff to build to go and make some physics lessons for today in our homeschool, and then you just use Lego.
Yeah, we would use it for bridge challenges, just basic anything to explain. I very much understand when you put something in front of you and you take it apart, having that physical to explain worked really well for us, especially for, my mom homeschooled me and my brothers. So I'm sure it was not the easiest for her as well.
There's a lot of people who say that learning styles has been debunked. There's people who say that learning styles aren't a thing, but I disagree. I think it is a thing. I think that there are tactile learners and auditory learners, and people who learn by seeing and people who learn by doing. Do you think that you became a maker and you became a software engineer because of do you think you were wired that way to come to start, or do you think it was the early tactile work with Legos and things like that?
I don't know if I actually even understood that until I went to college. And I remember I had a professor and he used to tell me, he's like, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it well enough yourself. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I remember him asking me, what did I really do as a kid? And I'm like, whenever I would get new stuff, I would take it apart. And I don't think I ever realized that was an engineering mentality of, how does it work this way? Why does it work this way? And probably until I got older. And because to me, since I was homeschooled, I was really never around any other kids till I was 16, 17. So that was completely normal to me.
Oh, and I have to apologize to our international friends and anyone who is a legitimate Lego person that I sometimes have a slight S at the end of my Lego.
No.
I know it's wrong. I'm working on it. It's a thing I'm working through, but I do sometimes fall into the Americanism of saying Lego plural. But I apologize to our friends at Lego Masters on Fox.
So we used to say, what's the plural of Jedi?
Jedis? Jedi?
No, it's Jedi.
You're right.
So that's a good way to always remember. That's what we used to tell Will Arnett on set. We're like, what's the plural of Jedi? He's like, Jedi. We're like, just Lego.
Yeah, that gets you into the whole like attorneys general, but then is it Jedi's master or Jedi?
Yeah, that was like when the movie came out, everyone's like, oh, The Last Jedi. But they're like, is it Jedi plural or is it Jedi?
Yeah, is it just him or is it like a whole bunch of people? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. So you started out in game programming and simulation and worked at Marvel Studios, worked on games.
Yeah, so my actual, I guess, college degree is in game simulation. And I was the very first female intern Marvel ever hired. Wow. And right when games, I started right after the Iron Man phase. So I worked on Captain America, I worked on Thor, worked on some of the Superhero Squad show games. I worked on a lot of the simulation for Thor's cape in the game. So at the time, physics rendering is very computationally expensive. Mm-hmm. And that was something that really hadn't been done before. A lot of games, let's see, I'm trying to think. I think the Jurassic Park game was one of the first ones to implement ragdoll physics, which is when you would shoot one of the dinosaurs, this dinosaur would fall naturally. And I just remember when that game came out, even though it was so terrible, that just the physics in that was so advanced. And something when you watch a pre-recorded cartoon or animation, all of that stuff is pre-rendered. But in a game, if you are moving your character around left, right, up and down, and there's any fabric or cloth simulation, that stuff is computationally expensive to render in real time. So that was something I was very proud of. And I still do simulation. I'm still a software developer, but yeah, it's evolved.
Could you dig into the definition a little bit more? Because I don't think that necessarily everyone who is listening knows the difference. Like everyone understands what game programming is, but game simulation, that is simulating objects within a game?
Yeah, so I guess simulation really is, so I did a lot of physics on primarily cloth simulation in games. And sometimes movies and films do that as well, but it's still game programming. So graphics programming, DirectX, when we were in college, Unity and Unreal. Unity was not out. I think Unreal had just started to come out. And all of those are engines. So a lot of things are done for you. So for example, I used to ask a lot of like my students when I would teach classes after, I said, do you know what gravity is on Earth? And they were like, no, why do we need to know that? And I'm like, well, it's 9.8. And they don't have to know that because that's built into like the Unity engine now, right? So it's just on a slider scale. But we used to have to calculate if your character is jumping, there's some type of physics that has to be applied if you're jumping on Earth. So we used to have to apply, physics and simulation to not only the characters, but to cloth.
Interesting. So then you can do that. One can do that now in Unity or Unreal in a plugin kind of a sense. Like it's kind of done for you.
Yeah, it's built in. It's amazing. It's I'm like, it's not fair.
Isn't that funny how it is? Like I do work in C# primarily and in managed languages, and sometimes you will come upon a person who never managed their own memory. And then you're like, then you become old person who shakes your fist at the cloud. And you go, when I was a child, we managed our own memory. We managed our own cloth simulation. You kids with your plugins.
Yeah, what do you mean I have to dump and have garbage collection? So
would the looking at Thor's cape for a second, would the cloth itself be simulated using calculations in real time, or would you calculate?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. So it's not like, think about it when you watch like a TV show on Netflix. It can buffer and get ahead. But in a game, it doesn't buffer or get ahead like that. So it was kind of broken up into polygons. So for example, there would be, say you have a square. Each corner would be one polygon. So 4 polygons for one square. And I believe Thor's cape was around 50,000 polygon points. Yeah. So each one of those is tied to each other, and whatever gravity is applied, or if you're running around in the game and you're turning left, you would expect that this cape is going to flow and fall with you naturally.
Wow. Now, would you have to work with as the game simulator? Would you work with like the creative director, and you're like, yeah, 50,000 triangles. That's how many we need. And they're like, no, like we only have 10,000. You have to like go and fight with them about the cape won't look good if you don't give me this much computational power. And they're like, no, we need it for the explosions.
No, I mean, this was also this was like the second or the third game, really that come out of Marvel Studios at the time. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, some of those discussions were had. Also, it was a little different. So, console for like Xbox and PlayStation was very different than if the game was on Wii. So, different, developer for some of that stuff. At the time, it was kind of like the Wild West. So, whatever they say goes. But also for Thor, not everything took place on Midgard, which is Earth. So that was some fun experimenting as well.
Oh, did you actually change the way the cloth behaves on different planets?
Yes. So that's why I said I know what the physics is on Earth, right? Because of gravity, and the Unity didn't exist at the time.
How do we get people to care about that stuff? Like, I just realizing that just then I was just like, oh, you're right. The cape would be different on different planets. That's so cool. And then it feels like there's kind of two kinds of people in the world. There's people who would find that incredibly awesome. And then there's people who are like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's not my problem. My problem is I want to know everything. And how do you get people to care about stuff like that? Sometimes it's finding an application that they're interested in. So I have a little brother in one of their classes. I know they all had to make a web page, but it had to be this cooking web page. So they had this template, and he's like, this class is boring. And I'm like, well, of course you don't care about cooking, and you're making this, you have nothing that, I'm trying to think.
There's no hook.
Yeah. So like he really likes baseball. So if he could find some way to make this web page interactive or about baseball, the learning application is so much different. I feel that's how I find like the best drive. I always talk about just any of the projects I work on is I call them especially I work on a lot of costume stuff. I call it the gateway drug. It starts with cardboard and it evolves to making your own printed circuit boards. It's, so my thing is about like fandoms, like finding some type of something that you love and you obsess about, whether it's reading a book or watching a movie or listening to a podcast, just something that you can't stop thinking about. But yeah, I guess that's the ultimate question of how to get people involved or to care about, things like that, where it's built into an engine now and they don't have to care about physics and it's pre-calculated. But also in the same way, it's nice because now I can evolve and I can make more applications. I can do more in a game and I don't have to spend, 6 months working on a physics engine to calculate gravity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fandom is, when I think about you and the work that you do online, whether it be in the maker community, in the tech community, in the learning and STEM community, or watching you make some of your famous cosplays, is that you really like the fandom and like you want to create more fans, because if people are excited about something, if you're just amped or geeked about something, then you're going to want to steep yourself in it. You're going to want to build stuff around it. You're going to want to make things that enhance the fan experience. And I'm hoping to make my kids fans as well of whatever they're interested in, whatever that thing is, like get all in and be geeked about it.
Yeah, it's very interesting in some way. Cosplay, which is, dressing as a character or some type of fandom, dressing as another character, you somehow find yourself. And I know that sounds probably like the opposite of what people would think, but it really is. You learn new skills. You learn how to work with physical materials. You learn how to do electronics. You learn how to budget your time, which is actually something. Time management is always something that I've struggled with in my real life, my jobs, my costumes. And you learn, great lessons about, not micromanaging, but, if you have a full armor costume, so say, for example, we're going to work on Thor, I would break that down by, helmet, prop, cloth, all of that. And then, go from there. It's interesting.
The breaking down of things in any system. I've done a number of podcasts on the idea of systems thinking, that we're out there trying to teach kids how to code, but we're not really teaching them how to think and how to break things down. So like using your costume example, you break things down into like individual functions. And it's like, okay, I'm going to need cloth, and I'm going to need to understand how to sew to do this. And I'm going to need to understand how to 3D print to do that, and break things down into the individual skills that are required for the larger whole solution.
Did you ever have the peanut butter and jelly example? Have you ever heard that?
No.
So I gave a class. We did a thing for an hour, for the hour of code that they do in a lot of schools. And we went in and we're like, all right, all these kids, you guys are going to be the programmers and I'm going to be the computer. And you're going to pretend I know nothing except for the instructions you give me. And they're in English. And so you have a loaf of bread, peanut butter and jelly in a jar, and knives, all of this on the table. And you ask them to give you instructions. And then they'll say, all right, what would I do first to make a peanut butter and jelly? And they're like, okay, open the bread. So I just took the bag and ripped it in half, and the bread went flying everywhere. But, the engineer in me says, well, you didn't specify. So, there's some things that are assumptions, but it's breaking it down to like the most simplified tasks. And
there's, the old software engineering joke where a spouse tells a software engineer to go to the store and says,
eggs.
go to the store, get some eggs and get some bread. And if they have eggs, get 12. And then they come back with 12 loaves of bread. And it's like, well, I don't know. Why did you do that? Well, they had eggs, That's the way we work, right? That's the way engineers work. One of the things that I thought was really cool in episode 3 of Lego Masters, you wore your own custom dress and you 3D printed stuff, and you're really a big passionate 3D printer user. And actually, one of the fun things that I thought when you were on the show, you were describing how you built something with Lego.
Yes,
and the way you described it within the context of 3D printing and infill. Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, so that I'm very happy that they showed that. So in episode 2, we actually got to blow up our builds with dynamite, and we got to blow up and destroy our Lego builds. We dropped them off a 2-story, on the 2nd floor. And it's not every day you get to destroy your build. So not only did it have to like break, but it had to be sturdy, but we didn't want to be wasting bricks and making it completely solid. So a lot of times in 3D printing, say you're going to 3D print a cube, you would not print that at 100%, which means it would be completely solid. If you do that, that's wasting materials. It takes longer. It may be stronger, but you can also get that same strength from different types of infill. For example, I use the honeycomb reference because it's printing it as a honeycomb, so you get the support structure on the inside. So we did that so not to waste Lego brick, but it's the exact same idea that you use in 3D printing as well. And yeah, it worked. The build looked glorious when it broke, and we were able to fill it with all the sparkle and Lego bananas. We made the biggest bang. I think it took the set crew like 20 minutes to clean up, and the entire build came off the moon. Like, we had this moon platform on set, and the platform actually moved, and they were like, so I guess no one knows. You have no idea what's going to happen. And even with the dynamite, we were laughing because they gave us glasses and earplugs, but I'm like, what about the rest of our bodies?
No one wants to manage databases if they can avoid it. That's why MongoDB made MongoDB Atlas, a global cloud database service that runs on AWS, GCP, and Azure. You can deploy a fully managed MongoDB database in minutes with just a few clicks or a few API calls. MongoDB Atlas automates deployment, automates updates, handles scaling, and more so that you can focus on your application instead of taking care of your database. You can get started free at mongodb.com/Atlas. Now, if you're already managing a MongoDB deployment, Atlas has a live migration service, so you can migrate it easily with minimal downtime and then get back to what matters. Stop managing your database and start using MongoDB Atlas. So your work and your work that you do with your costumes and your builds and your maker things is very kind of interdisciplinary. And I know that while I'm teaching my kids and I'm teaching the kids at the schools that I volunteer at, these individual disciplines, I have a little bit of trouble getting them to combine together. Like that example that you just gave was a really good example where knowledge you had in the 3D printing space combined with knowledge you had in the Lego space. And then, 1+1 is 3 in that context. And then when you put all of those things together into a build, whether that build be a costume or something that you've made, you're really good at combining all of these different things. What's a good way to get either our listeners, people who are interested in some of these things as a hobby, or young people combining these two things in unusual ways and getting them to think about things beyond just the siloed work of, oh, I made a piece of plastic crap with a 3D printer?
Yeah, I said forever using things for their unintended purpose. So I'll teach workshops sometimes for kids or adults, and especially if they're new to electronics, they won't understand, why do I need to learn how to do any soldering for these electronics? So I would go through this workshop of, teaching them, this basic microcontroller, how to do soldering. And they're like, okay, that's kind of cool. But then we would 3D print a sword, and then we would put in the electronics in the sword and make it glow or make it move. And they're like, oh, that's what you can use that for. You just need to get that moment, like from them, that they really combine something that they think is this everyday, I guess you're overlooking it. Yeah, it's always, everyone thinks so different. And I've learned that as I've traveled more and people ask, they're like, how do I find a hobby, or how do I find a passion? And I'm like, oh, because I've never really had those problems. If anything, I need to stop doing something. But
I think we can commiserate a little bit on that, because I was having built-in motivation, built-in passion, and not knowing why, and then becoming frustrated with people who don't, I think is a bias that I'm working on. We can't just assume that everyone's geeked.
Yeah. And I used to just say yes to doing more things, because that's where sometimes I get my best ideas. Is somebody says, hey, can you check out this project? And I'm like, okay, I don't really have time, but it gives me inspiration. And you're also so I have a really good example. So I know someone that works on pens. They make pens on the metal lathe and, or on the wood lathe. And
that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So, but I'm like, pens. I'm like, okay. I'm like, sure. I was like, I'll look at it. He wanted me to look at the mechanics or the gears on the inside. And then I saw that he was actually taking this block of acrylic or this piece of wood and milling these. I mean, they're gorgeous pens. And then it got me thinking, I'm like, somebody really liked pens. Think about but they have the pens that they can use for NASA. Somebody made a pen that you can write in a no gravity space. Somebody likes something so much that they figured it out, or it was just their passion project. And I don't know. So I'm like, never overlook something that you think is as simple as a pen.
My dad likes to hunt, and I'm not a big fan of guns, and I don't want to go and unless you give the deer a gun, I don't want to no reason to go and shoot a deer. So he's like, well, I'll go and I'll hunt, but I only use a bow and arrow. And then he would go and use a bow and arrow, and he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But then it became less about the hunting for the deer and more about making the bow and arrow. So first he would buy a bow and arrow, and then he would go and cut down a tree and get the specific piece of wood and then bend it with water over a course of months, and then go and string the bow. So now he'll spend a year making a custom bow and arrow using traditional First Peoples Native American techniques, so that he can go out and then miss the deer and come back with nothing. But it was the journey of the creation of the bow and arrow. And now he has this club of old people that he gets together with every week, and they make traditional native bows.
The community, that's how do you find a community of other people that are interested in the same things that you are?
And when you get that community, when you find your place, then things start clicking, and then you become more creative. Now, you said that you were homeschooled, you were kind of in your home until mid-teens. Did you discover a community? Did you come upon a community of makers, or was it in real meet space, or did you do this online?
So I guess online, I try to think about the first things I ever shared really when it came just to the internet. And I would share, gosh, anything from like a costume, be like, I made this technique or I added these LEDs to it. And I'm like, man, this is terrible, but I am so proud of it. And there's like nothing more epic than putting on like, some cape or costume or something that you've made with love and a few curse words. And then it's interesting because people would be like, oh, how did you do this? Or I had the same problem. And that's how you iterate and you become better. It's this sharing process.
And here's the thing, though. When you go and do something like that and you put it out there, that first reaction, if someone's like, hey, great job, even though if it was garbage or not, doesn't matter, right? Like that enthusiastic, I made this and that's awesome, can be the difference about whether or not you drop out of the fandom entirely. And that's why it's so important that we have a welcoming and kind community, because a 16-year-old making something and putting it out on the internet and having everyone tease them for it is a good way to just turn them off of making altogether.
Yep, I agree. And I really always try to stress, like, you should share everything, even if you think it sucks. And you're going to either inspire someone enough to make their own, you're going to get feedback and you're going to be able to improve upon it. But this idea of like perfection, that it's movie perfect the first time. I have a friend that owns a prop shop and they make all the stuff for The Mandalorian. And I remember when they were working on The Mandalorian stuff a few years ago and I was in the shop, I'm like, what is this? And then like I saw it, watching The Mandalorian, I was like, wow. I was like, I saw where that started.
Wow.
Everyone starts from this beginning of they don't know what they're doing and you have no knowledge, right? It's you collectively over the years. I always work on projects that I'm not doing the same thing. You don't have to completely start from scratch, but take some things that you know and then add one new thing that you don't know. So maybe you already know how to work with foam. You're going to make a foam costume, but you've never worked with LEDs. So just add some things you already know and add one new thing to that.
As we get towards the end here, I want to make sure that folks that are listening go and check out Lego Masters on Fox, because we have really enjoyed it. I think there's quite a few episodes left, and hopefully by the time I put this show out, there'll be continued episodes. I watch reality TV and I always wonder, like, how real is it? Are you all really there building Legos for 15 hours without sleeping?
Yes. Well, so here's the thing. So the set is union, so they get breaks, right?
But you're not union, right?
Yes. So that is one thing. So if, say, it's an 18-hour build, that may be filmed over 2 days, but you are mic'd up, 24/7, except when you're sleeping.
Wow.
That time clock is so real. When we were going back and watching, I think episode 3, my Lego partner, Crystal, when we were sitting at the house, I was fidgeting with my button and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's giving me like post-traumatic stress, like watching the clock go down and the red light. And it's just so interesting to see how they've put it all together because, so I think episode 1, there's 20 people. It was a 15-hour build. So that is a lot of time. I don't envy the editing team at all.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying you're mic'd up the whole time. Something's rolling in some way. Someone's taking a break. Someone else has got some rolling. They're trying to capture everything, and they condense it all down into 42 minutes. It was extremely stressful. And then they go and Will Arnett, the host, screams, and 1 hour left. And then it's like, go, 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 go.
Yeah, the time clock, all of that is real. Though I will say one of the best parts about the show is we had designated teams to pick up after us and sort all of our bricks every night because we're there for 18 hours a day. So for girls, our call time was at 4:30 in the morning for hair and makeup. The guys was at like 6. So
that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
That's totally unacceptable.
I was like, this is...
So you didn't have to clean up, though, which is good. Like, you could play as much as you want and you didn't have to clean up.
Yeah, and we had access to 3 million bricks and they're already pre-sorted. I always say one of the hardest parts is like part procurement for anything, whether it's electronics, Lego, it doesn't matter. And so it was really nice to have like this team do that for us. I remember telling my dad after, I'm like, I don't have to clean my room tonight when we were on set.
So if you needed a specific brick, if you wanted an element of a certain kind and you knew the name of it, was there a Lego expert? You say, oh, I need a 3x1, da 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 da, and they would go and find it? Or was it label makers? How did you find what you needed?
Yeah, so that was one thing. It took a little while to get used to where they had done all the layouts in the brick room. So they had done everything on the left side of the brick pit based on like plates, and it would start by 1x2s, 2x4s, all the way up, and then the right side of the brick pit would be technical pieces, minifigs. And so we had a brick binder that we were able to use for reference on set if we forgot where they were, but it took us a few days just to pick up where everything was. And if we needed something, since we're mic'd up and they're always listening, we would say, hey, we're trying to find this 1x2 ball joint, where are they? And then they would tell us. But at some point you're just running around in a cape in cosplay building Lego.
The brick binder, I don't remember any scenes where they've shown that, so that seems like a piece of movie magic that isn't quite as interesting as watching someone go through a giant 3-ring binder looking for a brick.
Yeah, they don't want to show that on set, which I get. So they also,
it makes sense.
Yeah, like we had safety meetings for like when we would blow stuff up with dynamite. You're having an off-screen pyro with the talk with the pyro.
Oh wow! So it was really dynamite. It wasn't like compressed air.
It was real dynamite. So
did it actually break a Lego? Did it actually destroy an element?
Yeah. That's what I find is so fascinating because they used me as like a pack mule, and they like took some bricks out of my like hood in my dragon dress, and like. It's really interesting because Lego bricks are done through like injection molding. And when we looked at the ones that blew up with dynamites, all the studs on the top of the Lego bricks were the first to blow off. And so I kept a few of them because I just thought that was like so fascinating that, when they're doing this injection molding process, that is technically the weak point. And because Lego bricks are made from ABS plastic, which is, you can use that with 3D printing as well. But, yeah.
Have you ever been to Aarhus?
No, I have not.
You have to go. I did some work with Lego.com, and I went to Aarhus, and I went and walked around on the floor where they do the actual work and make them. And it's just bananas. I'll show you some pictures sometime.
Yes, I would absolutely love that. I was like, I just want to know their entire process and
make the pilgrimage.
Yes, make it worth it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Amie Danielle Dansby, Amie Double D. You can find Amie at amiedd.com and on Twitter and on Instagram. And I would really encourage you to check out Lego Masters on Fox. Great show for adults and kids alike. My family has had a wonderful time watching it. I really appreciate you chatting with me today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.